To finish up your Frank Stella work, you'll need to make sure that you have your warm color side of your paper fully colored in. Again, anytime you're using materials like markers and oil pastels together, you want to make sure that you start with markers first, because if they go over top of the oil pastels, that can make your markers dry out. So I used oil pastels on top of some of my colors because they're nice and bright. I also used some neutral colors like white and black. I like the oil pastels on top of the marker because I can use a lighter color on top of a dark color. But how you did that was your choice. So on one side, I have my warm color scheme. So I have oranges, reds, and yellows, along with some neutrals. And then on the back side of my paper, I have my cool colors. And if you use the thick drawing paper, you shouldn't be able to see the other colors through the paper. That's one of the things that I like about it. So now we're going to make some cuts on our paper and do some bending and folding to turn this flat piece of work into a more sculptural work of art. When I start cutting, I want to make sure that there's a section that I remember not to cut. So I just take a lid and trace around it so that as I'm cutting the pieces of my paper, I know not to cut past that circle. Be careful about cutting your pieces too close together because if they're too close together, again, they could start to fall apart. Once I get my pieces cut, I'm going to start playing around with folding and bending the paper so that I can start gluing it down to get my two-dimensional work to look three-dimensional and a little bit more sculptural. As I'm working, I might decide to make a few more cuts. When I decide it is time to glue, I'm going to use just a little bit. That will help the glue dry a little bit faster. And I even spread it out pretty thin, and again, that just helps prevent me from having to hold it down for too long. I'm going to continue folding my shapes and bending them. Sometimes I might even weave them in and out of each other to create interest. Since I have cool colors on one side and warm colors on the other side, I can really play around with how I'm folding and bending the different shapes to create contrast with my colors. So if I want a cool color to remain on top, I can fold or bend it in a specific way to get my cool colors to show up. And same thing with my warm colors. I'm going to continue folding and gluing, thinking about how I can create interesting textures on my work. So I can even play around with different types of folds to make my work a little bit more interesting. If some pieces don't work for you, feel free to trim them off as you're working, but I would wait until after you start blending and gluing to do that. Here's what my work looks like with background. And as you can see, this is a little bit more of a relief because one side is a little bit more flat and the other side has a lot of dimension where it jumps out of the paper quite a bit.